remember that the limited sphere that you can focus on might not change the world for everybody, but it might change the world for that one somebody who needs us the most. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor to be here, I must say. I've grown up all my life watching TED videos, so to be a part of one, I must say, it is truly a privilege. Change is a very interesting word, especially when I'm addressing this changing demographic of Pakistan, especially when we're talking in these changing circumstances of Pakistan. Each one of us sitting here, and I had the same idea too, so I relate to each one of you as well. Each one of us here wants to change the world. We want to create a world that is better for every single person, that eliminates the evils, the destitution, the problems, the inequality that is present in our society. We want to create a world that is free from destitution, from poverty, from inequality, and we delve into our practical lives thinking about that. But remember, and you are all going into your careers, remember that changing the world is a daunting task. A lot of the inspirational leaders and changers have came into the society, but poverty, corruption, nepotism, that still remains. The idea of change is profound. However, the most important task, that is to think, is when we delve into the society, when we delve into the realities, we see the limitations that stop us from making that change. We see those limitations and those predicaments that lead us towards thinking of this idea that we want to change the world, but the world doesn't want any changing itself. There are two major issues that each one of you can relate to as well, that we see in our society. When we delve into our careers thinking that we're going to change the world and then reality hits, the first thing that happens is we start to question our self-worth. We start to question the contribution that we can make in this society. And we go towards depression or anxiety. But above all, another major thing that I'm witnessing every single day in the society is that when we feel, and all of you have felt, that the system cannot change, that we cannot create a difference, we cannot create a change, so thus it is better to move out to a different country maybe, to a different scenario maybe, which leads to brain drain, and a lot of the people are going to live out their own life because we cannot create the change, we cannot change the system. And that is something that I felt as well when I got into the government of Pakistan, into the administration of Pakistan, and that is whenever we step outside, we feel that as well. But as a graduate of economics at Cambridge University at UC Berkeley, one thing that I learned was to create realistic expectations. And today, I might not be an expert, I might not be a psychologist, I might not be a scientist, but one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open my heart in front of you and tell you my story. The story from Cambridge to Kuchlak, the story that has changed my perspective on viewing life. And today, allow me to change the narrative of the word change itself. So to explain that, I'll start off with a very interesting part of my life. If you can change the slide, please. On a very interesting part of my life, I was posted as the first assistant commissioner of an area called Kuchlak. Kuchlak is a very interesting place. You might have heard the place as the hub of the Taliban Shura. You might have heard the place as the place where Salman Taseer's son was found after he was abdicated. You might have heard that this is a place that is ravaged by terrorism, by poverty, by destitution, by inequality. So when I was posted as the first ever assistant commissioner to be posted in this area, I asked the people, and our previous officers said that there are a lot of places where no officer has even ventured even once. So the first thing that I did as a person aged 26, 27, the first thing that I did is I called all the youth of that area and asked them to sit in front of me and tell me, what is your biggest problem? And as all of you might think, one idea would come that we need infrastructure, we need roads, we need hospitals. But surprisingly, and that is something I want each and every one of you to know, surprisingly, what they said is that we need a library. And I started smiling and I said, because we take it for granted, you as students of NUST take it for granted, and we said the library, we don't even go to libraries anymore. And what they said is something very striking. So one person stood up and he said, sir, library for you is a place, a silent place where you can go and study. Library for us is the only place where we can find a book and we can find internet. That is something that moved me. And that was my start of my career. That is something that moved me. What I started is I started searching and surveying around the city for finding a place where we can start work. But if you go through the red tapeism, if you go through the government machinery and the government paperwork, it would take years for you even to put the first brick in. So I started a crowdfunding campaign in the UK, and people started pouring in money for that. I talked to my mentor, Mr. Amjad Saqib, who's the founder of Awaid and my teacher at the Pakistan Administrative Service Academy, and I asked him that, if he can contribute something to it. And I utilized the newly found popularity that we got after topping the CSS exam on Instagram. I used that to carry out a book donation drive that maybe some of you might know about as well. And a lot of people started sending in those books. And within the first 2 months, we created the first public library of Kuchlak. That thing might seem trivial to some. It might not be changing the world. It might not be changing the city itself. But remember that we dream of this idea of changing the world. It might not be possible. It might be difficult. All the accolades and awards I've got is nothing compared to that one smile of that child, that one prayer of that mother, and that one happiness of that father that we got when we created this. And now I see the person preparing for CSS in these academies, and I think to myself that we might not be able to change the world, that we might not be able to change the world for everybody, but we might be able to change the world for that one somebody who needs us the most. A similar example that happened in my life was that a mother came to my office one day and she said that my child has died of cholera, has died of drinking water that was contaminated. In a place where water is already meager, the water that was available was contaminated as well. Nobody had ever thought of that. And maybe a lot of people have passed and went and they've been looking at holistic things, but nobody has been looking at these major issues of the people. And what I started is I thought to myself that when I was studying abroad, and when you all are studying and you find so many people in your experience, when I was studying abroad, there were so many NGOs who wanted to contribute to Pakistan, but always had that trust deficit. Always wanted that one person that they can trust and they can send their money to, because obviously this narrative of Pakistan has to change as well. And they were not willing to send that money in. I started calling up those people, and a lot of my staff in the office had never heard that people talking about the city Kuchlak to people abroad as well. So what we did is we started making that campaign, and I started talking to NGOs abroad. And within the first 6 months or so, we started getting the money in. We started getting the contractors outside the government paperwork. And then in the first 6 months of Kuchlak, we created 7 water filtration plants that still continue to give access to free and clean water to the people who are living there. So as I said, that when we delve into the service, to be honest, every single day that I go to my office, I find people who have their houses occupied. I found people who have been implicated in false cases. For them, the world has ended. For them, their world is in trouble. And you are the only person who's in their path to dispense justice. A lot of people ask me that you've left your career at Cambridge University, you've left your career abroad, a lucrative career. How come you have not been demotivated yet? Why don't you want to go back? And a lot of you might feel exactly the same as well. That you're sitting here, you're deciding your future, you're deciding where to go, your career path, and then you think that we might not be able to change everything around us. We might not be able to change Pakistan. Why should we stay? We should live our own life and we should go abroad. I do not judge your choices. But there's one thing that I would like you to say, to think to yourself. After these two stories that I've told you, one thing that I thought was I might not be able to change the world for everybody. But when we created that water filtration plant and that mother, his other children were drinking clean water. When we created that library and the person who could have never been able to access those books is now studying for CSS and might become a civil servant one day and lift his whole family up. For him, the world has changed. For him, everything has changed. One thing, when I was at Gawada, and I've been sent to all over Pakistan in different places, and that has given me even more motivation to do so. When I was posted in Gawada, one thing that I saw is a lot of people from there were selling their stuff, were selling everything they had, and the children were saving all their money so they could go all the way to Lahore or Islamabad to study for the civil service exam and maybe, hope for a better future. And one thing that moves me always, and that is something that is very striking, is their determination in such adverse circumstances. What we have is we take it for given. We take it for granted. Their admiration and their determination in those adverse times is exemplary. And when I saw that person who said that I'm going to sell everything and I'm going to go to Lahore to study for civil service examination and I need to get an accommodation, one thing that came to my mind is why can't we utilize the information technology that we have and maybe provide access, and that is our responsibility to provide access to education to those people. And with that dream in my mind, I came to Lahore, we started a conversation, we found some of the most brilliant people at LUMS, and they started this new venture called Near Peer, which was just the initial start. And we got all the toppers together and we started recording lectures so that we can give access to education to those places. And within the first 4 to 5 years of Near Peer, I am proud to say that I personally have taught more than 40,000 students preparing for their CSS exam. It all starts with a dream. It all starts with an idea. But then it always stops. It always stops the moment we hit the wall of practicality. It all stops the moment we hit intricacies of life. And when we go out, we see the system and we say that, the system is flawed and we cannot change anything within the system. But remember, there's a lot that you can do within the sphere that you have. Every single day, I have 10 or 20 tasks that are assigned to me. Maybe 1 or 2 of those do have politicization. But what we tend to think is we don't tend to think about those 10 or 20 things that we're doing for the poorest person in the society. What we tend to think is about those 1 or 2 tasks where we have politicization, where we have nepotism and corruption, and we tend to be demotivated. So today, what I want to tell you is that there's a lot that you can do in the society. But this idea of changing the world is a daunting task. It's a task that might not be completed. But at that time, the ray of optimism, the ray of hope is what motivates you. The most important idea that I want to impart when I leave from here is that each one of you is moving into the practical life. Each one of you is the future of Pakistan. We all keep on saying those, and those are platitudes, and I used to hear those as well when I was sitting in front of you. A lot of leaders have passed. A lot of political thinkers have passed. But the problems of the society remain. We might not be able to solve the institutionalized issues. We might not be able to solve politicization, nepotism, corruption, and overpopulation in Pakistan, but remember that the limited sphere that you can focus on might not change the world for everybody. But it might change the world for that one somebody who needs us the most. So lastly, I'll leave you on a note that when I started my life, when I started going abroad, traveling to different places, every place that I go to, and when I was in Cambridge, I met one of my fellow masters, an MPhil PhD student, and I said, what do you want to do? Because we have these big dreams. I said, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to become a primary school teacher. I was surprised, given obviously everything that we have in mind, that if you've pursued your education to a certain level, you're not going to become a teacher at the primary grassroots. And he said exactly the same thing. He said that if we change the foundations at the very bottom, I might be able to change the world for that one child. And that stuck with me. In Kuchlak, we started off this campaign through Talim Foundation, whereby through iPads and through e-learning, we had in the public schools, in a place like Kuchlak, which was not even on the map, we started this campaign. We looked out for people. And remember, change is not individual. Change needs people. When you move towards that idea of creating progress, you find those people with you. When I created this library, I found people willing to contribute abroad. I found people willing to contribute in this country as well. But the most important thing is you're willing to have a practical, realistic mindset. So, to conclude, it is very important to remember, in this time when I'm talking to each and every one of you, especially the youth of Pakistan, that we delve into our practical lives, thinking that we're going to revolutionize everything. The moment we don't do it, we say, let's find a career abroad. Let's go to UK, let's go to the US where we can earn money and live our better life. That is something that goes on in my mind, that is something that goes on in your mind, and we can all relate to that. And we always think that the system is corrupt. There's nothing that we can do about the system. There's nothing that we can change, so it's better to change your own life. But then again, the reason and the thing that I want you to remember after this TED Talk is that there's a lot that you can change. There's that one somebody, that one mother, that one child, that one father who's waiting for you to dispense justice, who's waiting for your path to cross his path, and then you to do something for them. So why think that we were going to revolutionize the world when one road that you construct, one hospital bed that you make, one sewerage line that you repair should mean changing the world? Because as I said, the world does need changing. But it is not our responsibility and burden to change the whole world. But what we need to think, and one tagline that would probably stay with you after this TED Talk as well, is that we might not be able to change the world for every single person who's outside. There are a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues. But if we can do one good deed, if we can do one right thing, and if we can focus on the better things that we do in life, we might be able to change the world for that one person who's waiting for us, for that one person who longs for us, and that one person who needs us the most. Thank you, and it was a pleasure to be here.